Okay, so I want to look at some of the 2.1 homework problems with you to give you a sense of what we're looking to do with each of these. So the first one here, we want to try to set up, the nuts and bolts of a histogram or a frequency distribution. So I take my maximum and my minimum. The first thing I'm going to do is subtract them. So the first thing I'll do here is take 127 minus 14. That's my range. All right, that's the max minus the min. And then we look at, well, how many classes we want to divide that up by? We want to divide it into 8 different classes. So I'm going to take that 113, divide by 8. And now here's kind of the key part here. We always round this number up. I know normally 14.125, a rounding rule would be to round that to 14. But if we do that, we won't be able to fit all the numbers in here, okay, in the distribution. So whatever you get when you divide this, always go up to the next nearest whole number. So our class width is going to be 15. Okay, next, choose the correct lower class limits. All right, well, my minimum number is 14, so my lower class limits are going to have to, it's going to have to be either B or C, right? So we look at B and C and then look at what they're doing with each of those for my lower class limits. So the first class is going to include the number 14 plus 14 more numbers. Okay, so the first class would go from 14 not to 29, it would go from 14 to 28. So the next lower class limit, right, our first class would be 14 to 28, our next one would be 29 to 43. So these would be the correct lower class limits, right? They're just asking for the lower class limits, not both limits. Next one is now asking for the upper class limits. So what are they going to be? Well, if 14 is my lower class limit, the upper class limit for that group is going to be 28. Okay, and really to make life easier for yourself, once you get the first number, just keep adding 15 to them. Okay, so if I take 28 plus 15, that puts me at 43. Plus another 15 would be here at 58. That one they try to fool us there with the first couple being the same, but those would be my upper class limits, right? My first class goes from 14 to 28, second class goes from 29 to 43, and so on. Okay, so now in the next example, number 7, we already have the data divided up for us. They're telling us that any number that is in the this temperature range of 50 to 54, so think about how many numbers are in there. 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. That's 5 numbers in each class, okay? We don't want to just, so you don't want to just subtract 59 minus 55. If I did that, 55 is in the group. If I take 59 minus 55, I'm subtracting away a number that's in the group. So these class widths are 5, right? 59, 56, 57, 58, 59. So my class width I can observe there is 5, all right? So don't subtract to try to figure out that class width. Think about how many numbers are in there, okay? Class midpoints. We did this in class. So if I wanted the midpoint of the class, I just add the two endpoints together and then divide by 2. So 54 plus 50 is 104. Divide that by 2 is 52. Okay. Now the easy way to get the next one is just start adding class widths. You can do 55 plus 59, add them together, divide by 2, but it's probably easier just to move through here and add 5 to each of these. We know the class width is 5 each time, so just keep adding 5, and that'll take us all the way up to 82. If I wanted to summarize the data using the midpoints, just for an easy, quick visual representation, okay? And now remember the boundaries. The next part is going to be what are the boundaries, right? So if I wanted to bound 50, right, we know 50 to 54 live in that interval, so the appropriate boundary for 50 would be 49.5, right? He doesn't live in that interval, and then this is going to go up to 54.5, okay? The next class boundaries would be 54.5, right? That's the bottom end of that, up to 59.5. Okay, so these are my boundaries if I had little tick marks to show, so I know what numbers actually live in this interval, 55 to 59.5. And again, if you can see, all I'm going to do is just add 5 to these. We just keep adding the class width, and we can move right through this. Right, so you can see the boundaries, these would be tick marks that would actually touch each other, but since none of those decimals are actually in the intervals, are only integers, we would be able to differentiate between what numbers would live in which intervals. Okay. And the last one I want to look at is number 8. Okay, it's going to ask us several nuts and bolts and pieces to this. So we look at the first class. The first question they ask us is, what's the midpoint? So I'm going to take 20 plus 30, it's just 50, and divide that by 2, that's 25. Okay, what's the relative frequency, right? What's my frequency of occurrences in that group is 17. Okay, and then what's the cumulative frequency? Well, this is where I would just add all subsequent entries. It's still just 17. Okay, I did not read that carefully enough. We want our relative frequency here, not just the frequency. So the frequency is 17. Relative frequency is how often this occurs out of the total. So the first thing I would have to do is add up 17, 44, 66, 67, and so on. I have to add all of those up. So if I do that, I'm going to get 365. So here I got to take 17 and divide by 365. Okay, that's relative frequency. It's going to be a decimal. So to the nearest hundredth, that's 2 decimal places, 0.04. That 4 would get rounded up, and that would be 0.05. So I really want 17 divided by the total there. That would be 0.05, and then we can finally check that, and that is a lot better for us. So our next midpoint is going to live in between 31 and 41. So if you want to just double check that, if you're not good with picturing that in your head, 31 plus 41. We add those two together. We would divide by 2. And that's our new midpoint. That's 36. Okay. That's the midpoint of that group. The relative frequency is going to be 44 divided by 365. And we want to round that to 2 decimal places. So to 2 decimal places, that would just be 0.12. And then what happens here, our cumulative frequency, that's going to be 17 plus 44. That's 61, right? This is where we're adding everything that has come previously. Okay, we add them together. We'll do one more, okay, for this group here. If you can't see here, you can just follow the pattern. We can just add 11 to this. This next midpoint should be 47, but let's just double check. We have 42 plus 52, right? Add those two together, and then we divide by 2. But once you can see that pattern from the first class with, right, we can see we're just adding 11 every time. So that makes life a little bit easier, right? Relative frequency. 47 divided by the total, which we already know is 365. We've done it previously a couple times now. So that's going to be to 2 decimal places 0.13, right? I get 0.128. So to 2 places, I want 0.13. And now cumulative, what do we have? We want to add all 3 of these up, right? Or we could just take 66 plus 61. However you want to add the 17 and 44, we know is 61 plus 66. Or just add all 3 up if that's better for you. 17 plus 44 plus 66. I want to add up all 3 of those that have occurred so far, and I get 127. So that's my cumulative frequency, right? Cumulative relative frequency ultimately by the end will add up to 100. Oops. What did I get from my relative frequency? Oh, I typed the wrong number in here. This was 66. So I don't know why I wrote 47 over 365. It's 66 is our frequency in that interval. 66 divided by 365 is 0.18. So let's fix that. Oh, I see. I put the midpoint in. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's 66 divided by 365. I looked at the switching back and forth from these screens confuses me sometimes. Okay. So that's some section 2.1 homework help. I hope that's helpful for you.